We have a massive Mitch Marner update. Is following Leon Draisaitl signing a massive deal with the Edmonton Oilers. Reports and rumors are starting to escalate surrounding Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to break down those reports and discuss how it could change everything going forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're part of the percentage that aren't subscribed, about 70%, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's free, and we're on the road now to 12,000 subscribers. But Darius, let's just dive right into it. And we have a lot to go over today, specifically surrounding Mitch Marner. Now, we covered a little bit in the video yesterday. Obviously, Leon Draisaitl had a massive contract with the Edmonton Oilers, and what's still up in the air for the Leafs, obviously a couple things, Nick Robertson, but specifically now is still Mitch Marner and what his future in Toronto could look like. In an article dropped, Mitch Marner's latest gesture fuels speculation about the Maple Leafs' future, and there's a lot of stuff to go over here. And we're also going to dive into the Leon Draisaitl thing because David Alter dropped a report and basically an article speculating some more. But you can see this here. The lack of news on this front has left fans and analysts alike wondering about Marner and Toronto's next move, whether that's trying to find a common ground for a contract or a trade. And you can see one fan basically is talking about how an all-time great Leaf on and off the ice, Marner and Leafs are smart enough to know the vast majority of Leafs fans want him to play his entire career in Toronto. And then we know that obviously a few days ago, you have the Seth Jarvis contract, you have the Draisaitl contract. Wonder if this structure comes into play on a potential Mitch Marner contract to lower the AAV. And just recently, David Alter dropped an article discussing the Draisaitl contract and exactly what it means for the Leafs and Mitch Marner, which we'll dive into in a minute. But I just want to get your thoughts on all this, Darius. A lot of moving parts here surrounding the NHL, around the Toronto Maple Leafs, but not directly yet on the Leafs because they haven't signed Mitch Marner.
Yeah, a lot to break down here and a lot of moving pieces around the league with different contracts getting done as of late. And that first article was alluding to, Mitch Marner had a charity event with his foundation. And a lot of people are looking at that and saying, he's great in the community. And I was at a charity event that he was at as well a couple of weeks ago, a hockey game. And, he's great in the community and he loves the kids and all that. And he wants to be in Toronto. And I believe that, but I'm just not sure if it's best for the Toronto Maple Leafs moving forward with their salary cap structure to have so many guys making so much money. And Mitch Marner does deserve a lot of money for what he does on the ice. He plays in a lot of different situations and he is a very good hockey player, but I'm more concerned about the Toronto Maple Leafs success as a whole, right? As the team, if they can win a Stanley Cup. So I wonder if there is a contract extension coming just so they don't lose the player, right? Obviously, it's been pretty quiet on that front, but it sounds like that's kind of what they're pivoting to at this point. And I wonder what that contract looks like because obviously Seth Jarvis just signed. He has some deferred salary, so his AAV comes down every year. And obviously the Leafs can absolutely do something like that if they want. The Leafs can do whatever they want with the salary cap. Honestly, they're one of those teams with that luxury. And Draisaitl just signed for 14. So now that kind of sets the benchmark. Obviously, Matthews, when his contract expires, is going to make more than that. McDavid in a couple of years is going to make more than that. So where does Mitch Marner kind of fit in? And David Alter had some insight on that, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, and obviously you look at this, the Seth Jarvis contract. It got a lot of Leafs fans stirred up saying, why can't the Leafs do something like this? Or the Leafs should do something like this with the deferred payments. And again, I don't know if Marner's going to get an 8-year, $63 million deal. It could be less, could be more. But at the end of the day, Marner is going to get paid a lot of money. And you mentioned it there briefly that basically it's probably at the point now where it's unlikely he gets traded this offseason. There's a chance that he gets traded, a very small chance he gets traded at the deadline. But at this point, it's either he gets extended or they sign him in free agency or they let him walk. I feel like those are basically the three main options. He gets extended now or they wait until at the end of the year. And we know his agent came out, it seems like months ago now, and it was a couple months ago, saying that their plan is to have Mitch Marner play until this season is over, and then obviously they go into the offseason as a free agent, which is probably best for the Toronto Maple, or best for Mitch Marner's camp money-wise, but not the best, and probably the worst case for the Toronto Maple Leafs, getting nothing for the asset. But you saw what David Alter had to say here about Leon Draisaitl. He said, so where does Marner stack up compared to Leon? He said, like Draisaitl, Marner is an accomplished winger. We obviously know how good Marner has been, and quite frankly, he's been everything the Leafs hoped for, obviously, when they drafted him, and that's never been in question. But where Marner and the Leafs currently stand, it says the Leafs haven't been clear in their intentions about Marner's future, while the player's agent, Darren Ferris, has told various hockey insiders that his client intends to play out the remainder of his contract, like I just mentioned. But Alter gives some interesting insight here. He says if Marner stays, it's likely that he'd fall somewhere between 10.9 and 13.25 million AAV, so maybe around 11.5 to 12 million. It basically says it's hard to envision any scenario where Marner would top Matthews. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. We obviously know that Matthews signed a bit of a shorter term contract so he can maximize the amount of money he gets. I don't know if Mitch Marner's open to that. That would work for both sides, even though it would be a bit pricey on the Leafs front. But It's an interesting update there from David Alter. It seems like he's going to fall somewhere between the 11.5 and $12 million range, which is something that we expected. But it makes even more sense now considering what Draisaitl got, and I guess also what Seth Jarvis got to a degree.
Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised. And we heard that number 12 million thrown around a lot earlier this summer in terms of an extension if he wasn't going to get traded, which ultimately he didn't by July 1st. So we've seen that number thrown around a lot. And I don't know if I'm really comfortable with it. Like I feel like he has to make somewhere in the area of what he's already making. And obviously he wants a raise. Like that's going to be no surprise. And maybe he does deserve it on the open market. But for the Leafs success to be able to sign this player at 12 million, I know the salary cap's going up, but you got to re-sign Matthew Nyes. Like that is a must. You have to. Obviously, here Joseph Woll's going to get a raise in the coming seasons, right? You need to re-sign Jake McCabe, right? I think you want to look at retaining that player services as well. So yes, the salary cap's going up, but you have to be, careful with where you put your money. And we know that, we've seen, and they came out and said the core four, the idea is done. So what does that mean if they re-sign Mitch Marner? It's a little confusing because I assume John Tavares will be back too on a lesser AAV deal, his retirement deal, I guess if we want to start calling it that. But it's just a little confusing to me what the plan is here, and it sounds like it might be an extension at this point in time. But does Mitch Marner even want to sign an extension for that? What if he can get 15 million on the open market or something, right? Like, yes, he hasn't hit 100 points yet. I expect him to do that this year. I think he's going to go off because obviously it's a contract year. But, what if he can get a lot more in the open market? How badly does he want to stay in Toronto? And how bad did the Leafs want him for $12 million, right? He does play a lot or play in a lot of different situations. Power play, penalty kill, he's great in all those areas. But at the end of the day, the Leafs have to do what's best for the team, right?
Yeah, and obviously you compare Seth Jarvis. Obviously, Marner's going to get a lot more than the whatever 7.5 or $7.7 million that Seth Jarvis is getting. But it's an interesting kind of framework to look at with the signing bonus and how things are deferred. A ninth year that helps lower the AAV because maybe the Maple Leafs could do that if they're really worried about the AAV and bringing in other guys in the whether it's in the offseason or whatever it is via trade. But I mean, we know how good Mitch Marner has been. 85 points, 69 games, and Darius, you've been on record saying that next season is probably his breakout year just because it is his contract year. Maybe it's the year he finally reaches 100 points. He did reach 99 one season, but I don't know. It's going to be very interesting, and the Draisaitl thing maybe accelerates the talks or at least gives the Leafs, whether it's their front office or maybe Mitch Marner, some leverage. Now, I'm not sure who it benefits more. I mean, probably benefits Mitch Marner more seeing that Draisaitl's getting this money. That being said, Draisaitl's also a better player than Mitch Marner, so it's kind of like a bit of a weird thing here with the cap going up every single year. What Draisaitl's making now, which is the biggest contract in NHL history, that'll go up, like you mentioned, literally next season. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Ultimately, do you have any prediction here about what happens with Mitch Marner and the Leafs, just to throw it out there? Because there's a chance that he gets signed soon, or there's a chance, and my prediction is he rides it out heading into the season, which is a really scary thought for the Leafs because you really just have to hope that you go far and that he's willing. And again, we discussed it, if they make the playoffs, they go deep, they probably have no choice but to extend him if they make it into the, especially the Stanley Cup or even just the second or third round.
I think both parties are actually going to ride out this season without a contract extension. I think Mitch Marner's camp wants him to reach 100 points so they can be able to come to the negotiation table and say, hey, listen, he put together his best season yet. He's worth X amount. And I think the Leafs want to ride it out too, because if they go into the playoffs and lose in the first round again, I think they have to look at maybe just letting him walk at this point and restructuring the team a little bit because it's clearly not working. And if you re-sign him, yes, you're re-signing him for the sake of keeping the asset because letting an asset like that walk is a disaster, but your team just isn't good enough and you know the answer year after year. So my prediction, I'm not saying one way or another, but my prediction is they're not going to sign a contract extension. They're going to let it go into next summer. And I think both parties want it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe this will be the year where he puts up 100 points. That'd be very interesting to see. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this and where you guys currently stand on Mitch Marner and the Leafs. And we'll see you tomorrow.